Hello, hello. How are you? How are you, my beloved citizens of the Kleros Republic? How are you, Jean?
Doing great, and you? Anything? Everything all right with your eyes? I don't know.
I have a little like eye infection, nothing serious, but I was recommended by the doctors to just come here and look cool as fuck while I do the community call. So welcome everyone. January 21st of 2026. I can't believe this is almost. Next year is going to be 10 years of Kleros. Can you believe that? And we are like wine. What do they say? Wine gets better every year. I mean, I'm sure that this is really the case with us. And we have a really cool call for today, right, Jean?
Yes, actually, it's a project that we have been thinking about for a long time and experimenting and developing the idea, and now it's finally with being launched with a use case that is super interesting and super relevant to the industry. So I'm really excited that we are launching it.
Let me just give some context. Well, as you know, Kleros is known mostly for dispute resolution, but it's also a tool that can be used for certifications of different things. It's a tool that is really being used now on DeFi for certifying and preventing scams. And well, it's also being used for wine curation, for like organic wine curation. So it's not the sexiest, use case of Kleros, but it's one of the. I think that it's the one that has most traction actually, and it has the advantage that if you get going a very good curation system, a good certification system, this will prevent lots of disputes from happening. If you can make a list that curates reliable, trustable crypto assets, then you will end up in a situation where you don't have to go to a dispute because of some scam. So this is, if you want to put it this way, two approaches to dispute resolution. One is like ex ante, which is the curation approach where you prevent getting into like a bad situation, and the other one is ex post, when you already have the conflict, then you need to solve it. And Kleros is there to help. As they say, from the cradle to to the coffin. We can be there for help catering to all of your needs of curation and dispute resolution. Well, I guess that being said, Jean, do you have anything else to comment before we actually get started with the main dish for today?
Yes, just one thing, because I think it's very, very interesting. I don't know if they will talk about this, but Vitalik just made a post, I think 2 days ago or 1 day and a half ago, about exactly decentralized curation. And it mentioned, one of the things it mentioned is how safe, like a list of protocols that are safe, a list of DeFi things that are safe, a list of tokens that are safe. And this is like exactly what we are building with Kleros Curate. But yeah, I think that's it. We'll add Fortunato and Juan.
Hello, guys. Welcome.
Hello,
I guess
hello.
the stage is yours. Tell us what we have. Welcome, Stay Curate. Okay.
Welcome, everyone. So I will give a brief intro about Stake Curate and how it works on a technical perspective. And then with Juan, we will analyze more into the detail and the launch of the first list with Stake Curate. So brief introduction. We have been working on traditional Curate for many years, has seen many applications. And the way it works, I will go over it really quickly, but for most of our community members, they know how it works. So let's take the Genesis example with the sex listing. They have a policy with criteria for tokens to be listed on their platform. Let's say Alice has its own token and she wants to be part of the platform. So if this listing is using Curate, how the process would look like. So the first step, Alice places a deposit where basically she's pledging that her token complies with the policy set by the listing. Then this token goes through a challenge period where curators can check if this token effectively complies with the policy. If it doesn't comply, they will start a dispute that they will go in Kleros court, and you'll have all the incentive system. So if the challenger wins the dispute, the item is not listed and the challenger get a bounty. But if the item is registered at the end of the process, Alice will get her deposit back and the item will be registered on the list. So we have been using this system already on many scenarios, mostly in Web3, but we both had examples like the Finex partnership, where we were able to detect a scam token where the team was then arrested. And as of today, through Scout, which is an app built on top of Curate, we have the largest decentralized database of contract metadata. So basically, we associate information to smart contracts. So let's say that a specific smart contract belongs to this project, or the same for a token. We verify that a certain website, a certain image belong to that address and therefore that token. This has proved to be effective because we now count more than 600,000 verified addresses, and we have a lot of partners. The main players in Web3, they are working with us. So like MetaMask, Etherscan, Ledger, but also BlockScout, RootScan, OtterScan. So we have many partners being aware of how well the system works. So we explained these in DeFi, so with tokens and smart contract, which are most of the cases, they are quite static items. So Curate is working and will continue to work perfectly. But there are certain use cases, like every tool is specialized to do certain things. There are some use cases where the items are more dynamic, so they can change throughout time. And as you saw earlier on traditional Curate, at the end of the challenge period, the deposit goes back to the submitter. Therefore, the submitter does not have a proper incentive in keep being compliant with the policy. So here it comes Stay Curate. Stay Curate, the first part is the same as traditional Curate. So there's a policy, there's a submitter. The submitter pledges that the item, whatever it is they are submitting, complies to the policy. This item goes to a challenge period where still doesn't count as verified. And after this challenge period, the item is verified, is registered, and everyone can check in the registry. So here now the fourth point is where there's the difference with traditional Curate. The deposit, it doesn't go back automatically to the submitter, but stays locked till two possible events can happen. The first one is a withdrawal. So the submitter willingly decides that they do not want to comply anymore with that policy. They don't want to get the advantage they had from being registered in that policy. So they withdraw and they get back their money. And the third parties will know that that specific asset, that specific item is not compliant anymore. Or the other one, if the submitter wants to commit fraud, or for any reason they are not complying anymore with the policy, maybe they've been superficial. So this is a risk for the third-party users. There are curators who will constantly check the list and see if the items are compliant. So in this case, like on traditional Curate, if there is a challenge and the challenge is won by the challenger, they will get the bounty. This has, of course, built-in incentives for both sides to keep the item compliant on one hand, and on the other hand, to keep monitoring. Here, there's a brief breakdown of the type of incentives. So the submitter wants to stay in the policy because maybe they have some advantage. They can access to a certain market. They can get more users. So they have the incentive in keep their item compliant. The challenger, the obvious incentive to monitor the registry is that if they find any submission that has some problems, that it's not compliant anymore, they will be rewarded for this. And also the final users of this platform, they will be sure that day by day those items are complying with the policy, so they are safe to interact. So this state curate can have application in many different fields. So, for example, one could be for social media, where you have a set of users who comply to not post scam, so not to try to scam other users in order to be part of a certain group or of a certain social media. If they post scam, they will lose money and they will lose the access to that specific group. So for social media protection, the same principle you can apply it in gaming. Maybe there's a tournament and you can keep playing in that tournament only if you do not cheat. In case you cheat and the system is using stake curate, you will lose your stake and you will not be able to be part of the tournament. It can be used for traditional finance. For example, you can create a list of ETF that deal only with green investments, so with renewables. And the last one, which is what we are going to discuss today with Juan, which is the first stake curate use case, is with vaults, so that you are sure that when you interact with the vault curated by stake curate, in the moment you see it in the list, it means that it's complying with the given criteria. So this is the introduction, and now I will let Juan move forward with the with explaining how this first list and first integration between stake curate and hi Juan.
Hey man, how are you doing? Hey everyone. Yep, and thanks for the intro. Great overview. I used to do these great introductions and it sucked. Maybe in Spanish we're better, but yeah, like as Fernando mentioned, this curate itself and the mechanism of curation is something that has been present in maybe all aspects when it comes to on chain implicitly and also off chain, obviously, in different things of moderation, especially like in the algorithms on Twitter, Instagram, and everything is very key. But there's this particular thing on DeFi and the intersection of curation that when in DeFi, there has not been much delegation of asset management until recent years. So in traditional finance, all money is generally 100% on asset managers, and individuals, like generally they don't take all the decisions all the time. In DeFi, that wasn't the case. That's also maybe because adoption lagged a bit, and now we're seeing this transition into curators or asset managers, and it's like growing pretty fast. And I think it's the healthy thing, and for long term, yeah, I would say viable and financial, like let's say, performance when you're an individual investor. Because imagine that if in traditional finance you can't keep with all the things that are happening, how difficult is in DeFi, that there are more risk, more yield. You need to assess all of those legs. So yeah, and going into that, I will share screen. I think I will share my whole screen, and then let's see, share screen. Okay, and okay, I will share the entire screen, and maybe I shift it. So like in my company, like you know that in Kleros we have, for example, made over the last 3 years, we have kept a new USD and ETH portfolio, mainly ETH, like 70%, and we aim to build this framework that is objective, but in which you want to explain and like to yourself actually for decision making, in case we were like an internal asset management, how do you assess risk, why do you consider certain protocols, why no, and we explain it in this post. That is something we developed with Clement back in the time, and internally we kept it. Now it's very difficult to maintain manually, so we are evolving it and trying to automate it. But this is the decision-making process of why we allocate funds and how, and what's the decision being taken when we say, okay, for the Kleros cooperative money, we do this. And would be great to all asset managers have done this or doing this, and it's not very often common. And you have this dilemma on asset management that says, okay, if you see, let's see a random, let's see here in DeFi Llama, for example, if we check, I don't know, Almanac or whatever, we want to see protocols that manage TVL. And even this project, for example, is not a rock, not at all. But you see that they reached 160 million, and now they're like 3 million. So it's like a decrease, huge. It's kind of tied with this stream finance fiasco. That if you remember stream finance, if we go and see, stream. Yeah, you see stream finance 0 total value locked, and here you see that here they launch. Oh, they grow a lot, but they were like having some good yields, but how they manage the money was kind of like, wow, what are you doing there? And not, it's a different risk profile that is perfect for some people, but the issues they didn't know, and they know with the rules they were playing, and they reached 200 million. Actually, in the UI there was like 500 million, and you see here how it does instantly to 0, and this generates a cascade effect that is totally different to the balancer hack. Is another thing. And the thing here is people were depositing into a fund, and when they were depositing into a fund, they were like trusting the asset managers, but under certain circumstances. And what we developed before this, but actually the product, we didn't launch it, and it's also something that we have been iterating, is a way to use Curate to say, hey guys, okay, there's like a lot of information, good and bad. There are a lot of asset managers, good and bad, that do their job. Is there a way we can like make homogeneous, like a trustless list, so people can, asset managers can give an extra vote of confidence to their fund? Okay, and is there a way in which users can use that to take it into account? So if you see, let's see if in DAM side now, we can see it, and you should be able to see, okay, now this like is this wallet is like sucks, but if you go to another wallet, it works okay. Okay, I will change it later, but basically you can see there that is, you have a badge that says Curate by Kleros Curate, and you can go like to any fund. For example, let's say that you want to fund of Lagoon, and you search for DAM Capital, that is our fund, that you can see, okay, our 2 funds, and what's our fund, and why we take decisions, etc. And you could have a badge here that says, besides the description of this fund, you can also get this badge, that this badge like entitles that you will fulfill certain rules. What are these rules? Well, same that in Kleros Curate, anyone like can create a registry in which you say, okay, this vault, in our case we say RC 4626 and RC 7540, fulfill these rules. As you see here, we go into the details and we say, okay, we are saying that we have exposure to certain protocols or certain assets, and we give the definitions, and we show examples of how's this list. And in case I go this with the DAM example, and I put, for example, here, which are the accepted assets. This meaning, if you are a user depositing into the fund, you know that the fund, if it has this badge, this Curate badge, is only interacting with these resilient assets. So you can, like before depositing, as Fede was saying, see if these assets fulfill the risk profile, and you know that the manager has this badge because it means that they're putting skin in the game to be in this Kleros Curate list, and they're only interacting with these protocols. If at any moment they don't interact with these protocols, they can be challenged. And here we have the assets, the protocols, etc. And you can see how it can be removed and how it can be like, how it can stay there. So the process in which you will see like these vaults, in which you see here, you see the battle tested DeFi vaults, and you see that you have like the first vault that is the DAM Capital, and we left $300 as a skin in the game to say, okay, our vault fulfills with this, and anyone can submit their own vault. It doesn't mean to need to be DAM vault. It could be any asset managers in DeFi that wants to give an extra layer of confidence to their users. So any asset manager in Lagoon, for instance, could do it. Any asset manager in Morpho could do it. And let's go with an example. So let's imagine a Steakhouse team that is one of the most reputable also asset managers on the space, or could be any asset manager, could not even be an asset manager, could be a user that likes Steakhouse or that wants to prove this. Say, okay, this is a vault, a saving vault, because I can save dollars here, and you can see that the yield, okay, is lower. It's like 3.6. Why? Because it's a very low risk, and that's the goal, right? If we are like doing battle tested protocols, we see that we are using battle tested infrastructure, and we know that this is safe, so we can say, okay, this interacts with Morpho. That if you see here in the list is an approved protocol, you can just go and check the list. Here you see Morpho Blue is an approved protocol, and you can see the listing policies we mentioned are the ones that are here, like here, view listing policies. And then you can basically go and try to submit this, right? So in my case, I say, okay, this vault is on Ethereum mainnet. I will like submit the address of this vault, that is this one. I will put a description that I will copy this and I will paste it here. Okay. The website link, I simply put a link so people can deposit and identify the vault. And then I put a logo that is optional. And you see that here, I will do it live. I can say, okay, now I'm Steakhouse or I am a user, and I want to give my like the other people a layer of confidence that this vault meets these requirements. In this case, the battle tested DeFi vault, but any asset manager could create another one. Could be, for example, algorithmic centralized exchange bots that only interact with Binance and I don't know, Coinbase. So you can say that here I need to put a item deposit, that is the deposit like Fortunato mentions, that we will leave constantly as skin in the game, that the good thing is it still gains yield. So we're depositing SDAI from Spark, that basically is the receipt token that we receive when we deposit in the risk-free version of Gnosis chain. And then after that, we see that arbitration cost is $36 in case someone would challenge my dispute. So I need to put that, and in my case, I will approve my signature. I will continue. I will enable this, and I will like confirm this. I will confirm the transaction. I will approve the RC20, and then I will simply deposit and submit the vault. So I will submit the vault, and in my case, anyone could challenge me here if I have made a mistake. If I have made a mistake, I will pay it. Here is an issue from Ravi, and that is having with Gnosis chain, and I will submit the vault. And once I submit the vault, this will be already taken as a battle tested fund, and anyone could challenge this, challenge me in this case to say, hey, Steakhouse did met or not met with the conditions. And the result is that users in Morpho or in any other UI could integrate this Kleros badge that you can see it also here, that like will be something like this, that is verified by Kleros Great. It means that the asset manager not only do they measure risk and yield based on their framework, but also they are putting money like us to prove this, and not only saying, okay, I receive your money and I win money from the money I made you, because that's an asset manager problem always. If you win money on performance fees, you're incentivized to take the more risk as possible to gain more money and get more performance. And that's why we consider, like in DAM and also in turning Kleros, we play what we call long-term financial games. And we explain how we don't follow the highest APR, the number on the UI of getting the short-term high financial return. We try to estimate the financial number that is measurable, objective, versus a subjective number that we estimate on in-house, that we say how much risk are we assuming for this position, and we always estimate that the yield we're getting is more than the risk. Because if not, what could happen is that maybe we deposit into a fund that happens, like for example, I don't know, stream, could happen the stream thing, in which if we like are just looking the highest yield and like using different protocols, we could basically suffer a rug, and we don't want it to the users, etc. If you see here, they are still having the same app, so that's funny. Anyways, I think I have talked a lot, so want to keep it short. The short-term answer is Kleros Curate enables any asset manager now to submit their ERC 4626. That is the most common, and like any Aave or Morpho Vault that you see here, a position, a Morpho could be that. Any Euler position, any tokenized strategy you will see is able to get this, and you can integrate them in their like Fera protocol. You can use this to integrate in the UI and give an extra layer of confidence to your users. And you are kind of a junior capital in the sense of that you're putting also money to say, I'm interacting with this set of protocols. And if you don't agree with us, like on what's about the tested DeFi protocol, you could create your own list. Like Stakehouse could create their Stakehouse blue chip list and put the parameters they want. So that being said, I hope that more people adopt it, and I think it's something cool. I have also always want to merge Kleros and DeFi beyond the asset management we have done all the time, and yeah,
I guess he got too excited. It's
Yeah.
it was a great presentation. I don't know. Hopefully he's okay. Are you okay, Juan? I mean, if you can come back, come back. I will just comment something because so just to see a bit like of the big picture of what this means for the future of DeFi. So maybe let me tell you something about the London Stock Exchange. There is this very good book by Edward Stringham that is called Private Governance, and he explains in this book different processes when rules in some community started not by being done by the government but by private actors. The very famous example is the London Stock Exchange. So in London in the 17th century, the traders used to meet at a place called the Royal Exchange. But that was an exchange where people would trade, like wool, cotton, whatever other stuff. And then on a corner, they were the traders used to meet there. It was the early days of the stock companies, the East India Company and all that. At some point, the king, because of I think some political pressures of I don't know who, but they banned traders from the exchange because, well, I guess finance was a speculative activity, and that was not well seen by the church, I imagine. So they get kicked out of the Royal Exchange, and then what do? They start trading on the street in a very famous street in London. If you happen to go to the city of London, there is this street called the Change Alley. I've been there like when I went for the conference of King's College on last April. I went to see it because I had never been actually there. And you see it's like a back alley where you would imagine people would go to buy, drugs. Well, in that time, people would go there to trade stocks because it was like not. I mean, they were not criminals, but they were like kind of in a gray area of the law. And at some point, they start meeting in a cafe called the Jonathan Cafe, and then that was the first iteration of what ended up becoming the London Stock Exchange. And they used to buy and sell, different types of assets there, and they had really complex rules, but that they developed themselves. Remember, the government was not involved at all because this was not a legitimate activity, and they developed a private governance system that enabled them to make a really complicated transaction, very sophisticated transaction of futures, options, many other things. The government only became involved in the 19th century, like more than 100 years after this private governance system started working. And Adam Smith, speaks about this, in the Wealth of Nations, how this system works. And the interesting thing is that, I mean, this could create some legal order in a completely private way. And well, what we are seeing in DeFi is kind of the early days of a kind of legal order where governments are having lots of trouble into regulating this because of the nature of international transactions, anonymous actors, very fast, transactions, all of that we know. So, and the reality that we are seeing tons of crypto assets being created every day, and governments still, they don't have really the capabilities to monitor all this. So, what we are seeing is lots of private governance tools being applied to this. You could see, like exchange listings, like a certain type of private governance. The exchange defines, what tokens to list in their offering based on their own evaluation of the token. And even if, so because governments could not, monitor everything. And but that is, it works, but it's still centralized, and it doesn't have the nature of rule of law because it's not a public process. People don't really understand how the decision is made, etc. So this thing we are doing here, that we are starting to build, is this private governance ordering, but with some public characteristics where you make a list and then you submit the token, and then this goes through a process that everyone understands, that is public, that the decision-making logic is visible for everyone. And this is how, a rule of law is supposed to work. It needs to give you predictability. If you are accepted, you will know why you're accepted. If you are rejected, why you're rejected. And this is one of the natures of, like why blockchain is kind of a rule of law for digital age. Just want to mention, I don't want to bore you, with all of this, but just mentioning also that we are currently supporting a student at in Oxford Law School, Ekin Genk, who is actually researching how DeFi is building these private governance tools for securing transactions in this new world. And he is working under the supervision of a very well-known professor called Fernanda Pidier, who wrote a very good book that I strongly recommend. It's called The Rule of Laws. And it's about how in different times, different rules were created through purely, private means. This happened in the London Stock Exchange. It happened, in eBay. eBay had a private system of dispute resolution for buyers and so on, all that. So this is kind of the nature of it. And what I expect to happen at some point is that, so there's going to be like a kind of a merge or collaboration between public institutions and private institutions. There is this other scholar called Gillian Hadfield, and she wrote this very good book also, Rules for a Flat World. And she explains that what we're going to have in the future, because of the internet, is like a different three-tier, regulation system. So you will have on top of the system a super regulator. Let's call it someone who makes the rules for the system. And then the super regulator will oversee different regulators that make sure that the compliant agents are complying with what they are supposed to do. I imagine, this stake your rate tool and the different vaults to be like a private regulation entities that will comply with the super regulator requirement. So super regulators say, okay, if you want your token to be compliant with XYZ, law, okay, you will have to have it accepted into this vault. And then all of the process of complying and being accepted or rejected is going to be done through this public process. So this is why this is a small step, but the vision of this is like a really, really big in the sense of being a fundamental tool, potentially of regulation of a world that is DeFi, that is kind of trying to transition from the Wild West kind of environment to the rule of law, security for traders, and in a context where it's becoming more and more harder for states and governments use traditional tools to oversee all this. So yeah, go ahead.
No, you've mentioned Fede, this of being part of a bigger rating and confidence. These are clear example of how it could look like, right? In the Morpho in UI, you have this risk side, and you can have Kleros create, but here not as a in this case you see a rating. In TradFi, you have traditional ratings, and you have, for example, in this case here is explained how the morph rating works, etc. But then, and in DeFi, we are only is starting to have these ratings. But you can, like, Kleros create is the permissionless way of like creating sort of ratings, and you can have this as well. And then that maybe like an exchange tells you, okay, I only accept your fund if it has this rating from a centralized entity plus the added layer of decentralized thing. So yeah, just wanted to couple it with what you were mentioning.
And let me just add one more thing to that argument. So what happened in the financial crisis 2008, remember the subprimes, people, I mean, those assets had inside, really toxic, worthless securities based on worthless mortgages. And still the credit scoring companies gave them like AAA, rating because of, conflict of interest. It's kind of a bit like, this was not done like on purpose, the coincidence that, when they go in the movie, The Big Short, they go to the credit scoring company to have their, assets, credit. What is the woman wearing, in that scene?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember.
Glasses, yeah. Yeah.
Because she can see everything. She went to the, oculist, and she couldn't see anything. Oh, and she was the person who was like trying to, in theory, overseeing, the compliance of assets. We all know how the story ended. So these credit rating systems need to be, compliant, transparent, and complying with the rule of law, so not to end up with like a very, very big financial crisis, maybe 10x bigger because of the more global nature of these markets. And I have no idea what happens if you have these cascading liquidations, everything enforced through smart contracts, and you don't have a lender of last resort to provide liquidity into it. I have no idea. I mean, it must be like the Great Depression times 20. I have no idea. Let's pray it doesn't happen. Because these tools are going to help us, reduce the risk of the financial system.
But also, they are very useful for the final users who wants to interact with the vault, because they, they can be sure that the vaults registered in that specific list, they comply with the policy. So it's easier to make investment choices. But another point that I think is interesting, even, quoting the scene from The Big Short that you mentioned, there could even be the scenario where one of the users finds one of the vaults misbehaving, right? In a normal centralized ecosystem, these users should try to get in touch with this centralized verifier. These users should try to convince them that vault is not complying anymore. So it would be a long process, and it's not even sure that it would go in the right way. In this way, with this list, if I am a user and I am sure that this vault is not complying and they are doing something shady, I can right away flag it myself, and I will not just help other people in not investing in that vault, but I will also be rewarded for that. So I will help the community and I will be rewarded for that. So also from the real user of these vaults is extremely good to be sure they comply with the rules.
That is a really interesting point to also explain, why stake curate is different from traditional curate, in the sense that, okay, you got your asset listed in curate, all good, you comply with the conditions in the moment you had to comply, you're good. Well, and then, okay, 2 months later, what if we run a little bit of more risk in our list vault? It's okay. We were already in the list. Nobody will notice. Market is going up, so no problem. And then 4 months later, but this seems to be working. Maybe just a few points more of risk. And it ends in 2008. So this, after people will see that you are running more risk than what you're supposed based on the policy of that particular asset, you will. They will just challenge you, and then you are going to be removed. So you don't have any incentive to try to game the system in that way. So this will result in like a more and more like a secure DeFi system. If we get this right, DeFi is going to become more secure, maybe even more secure than traditional finance, because everything is going to be public and the compliance regime is going to be public. And this could help people switch into DeFi and, well, I mean, avoiding the big prices created by, I guess, greed. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, and the bounty, the ability to challenge any vault, just to mention that, is like pretty attractive because you're like, and now you're not challenging now in create things that have very low value, but you're trying things that have a lot of value, so the bounty is even bigger. So that means that there are more eyes all the time taking a look to it.
So you have like lots of like whistleblowers looking into the vaults and seeing if the assets are complying or not with the condition. Okay, let's cut it here. Just maybe Juan, maybe if you want to give like 1 minute, pitch of what DAM is and what you're doing. I mean, for people to know. I mean, this is a good moment to do it.
Great, thanks for letting me shilling that. Yeah, basically in DAM, we describe as a crypto native asset management. We were born like as a unit fee free quant shop, and I joined the guys that are friends from some long time to like evolve and combine with my macro view. So we are like a asset management or DeFi lab company that has two verticals. One is the tokenized funds. We don't take directional bets, that we don't think Bitcoin or Ethereum is cheap or expensive. We just say, okay, you put your Bitcoin, if you have Bitcoin, your Ethereum, and your dollars, and we just ensure that how to make yield while taking the less risk as possible on your assets. And the other vertical is we believe the future of finance is the blockchain, and that DeFi will end up being finance, and for that happening, institutions needs to come on chain. But for that, they need to understand the DeFi mechanisms, and also they need to understand technology. And we are the arm that give their services like as a traditional SaaS, but we call it that as DeFi as a service. So we held them on board. So that's the pitch for them. If you're bullish DeFi, you're bullish DAM. So yeah.
And DAM is the first user of StakeCurate in the way Juana Fortunato explained. If you are working on a DeFi protocol and you want your assets to be secured and publicly, compliance for people to see that you are actually doing the right things, I mean, get in touch with Fortunato and we will help you with. And if we get enough traction on this, I mean, this can become I don't want to say a standard, but a standard for safety in the global DeFi ecosystem of years to come. Thank you, Juana Fortunato. Let's move on to other things. Let's have William now.
Let me add William, but before I just want to mention one use case that we will also use StakeCurate, which is a serious oath. And there's basically a note for companies that for VCs. I think they are based in California, and they all signed this oath. And these people from this particular VC, they wanted to have that to have more power, let's say. So they will be using StakeCurate to have deposits on each of the VCs, and if they don't comply with one of the rules, people are incentivized to report them and get the deposits. So that will come next.
Cool. Welcome, William. What do we have for the week?
Hello, everybody. So I too am excited about StakeCurate. That opens a new space with mechanisms. So I'm looking forward to seeing what was developed with that. Gives us more flexibility in our research. Generally, in terms of what was going on, it's similar to what we've been, I've said in previous community calls. I continue to think a lot about social choice theory, how to design the right different voting and incentive systems, not one voting and incentive system to kind of rule them all, but because V2 is very modular, we can design lots of different voting and incentive systems for different kinds of use cases. So frankly, the research potentials are endless, and I can keep thinking about this forever. So, voting incentive systems that handle well, having options copied and having lots of very similar options. We call clone resistance or something I'm thinking about now. But generally the design space is really large. We've been having some good, interesting conversations with some of our new fellows. We have a new batch of fellows There's some that are doing more crypto economic research, which is exciting. People are delving right, into like the details of mechanism design.
I think that it's worth mentioning. It's good, the thing that you brought this up, that we have one fellow who is doing a curated approach to defining what pieces of content are or aren't like AI generated for, in social media. You can like submit this into a list, and then people can, challenge or not, depending if they think it's AI or not. You could see this as a bit like community notes for detecting AI, and based on on crowdsourcing. But the community notes have a number of problems because of the way in which it's structured, that tends to have people not really think what they think is the true. They just tend to, especially in like highly controversial, divisive cases, they tend to side with their team. If I am expected to think this, if I am from this team, then I will just vote that this is, not fake. So I actually spoke about this in a conference at the Neuchâtel University about social media and Kleros, and then my talk proposed this curation approach, and I say why this approach based on community notes is worthwhile, but it's limited in the sense that maybe sharing points that produce alignment of economic incentives with the truth. So you could see that as maybe resolving this divisiveness of the sides voting for. So that is one thing. It's really cool, and also mentioning that it's also about curation. Also, let me just mention that we are writing with William a book for Edward Elgar. It's about the financial law, and the chapter is about decentralized justice in the context of DeFi, and we are reviewing a number of use cases of Kleros in the like as an oracle for prediction markets, for decentralized insurance. We are discussing how to prevent economic attacks in the context of governance decisions, and one of the sections, I would say maybe the most important section, and where there was more traction, is actually this curated list approach to verifying assets that are compliant with some security profile, some risk profile, etc. I don't want to now go into the work we did with the Maker Foundation back in the day about real-world assets, because it was also a curation approach. Maybe William, you can explain a bit. One of the weaknesses that the curation approach traditionally had was the challenger's dilemma and the incentives for challenging topics and items where you don't know if you're going to. You spend time examining, items, and maybe at the end of the day, none of them is challengeable, and then you just spend time doing just due diligence without earning anything. Explain a bit how that mechanism work, and maybe how could AI help solve this in the sense of enabling better due diligence or not?
Yeah, the fundamental problem that you got at is that challengers have, particularly if you have human being challengers, they're spending their time looking at things. And at the end of the day, if it's not challengeable, they don't get a reward for that. They only get a reward if they successfully challenge something. If there's a reasonable percentage of challengeable things on the list, and they have a reasonable, one in however many chance of finding a hit that something was challengeable and they get rewarded, then it will average out and they'll be like, okay, I spent however many units of my time reviewing things, and I got one hit out of however many, and that sort of compensated the entire amount of time I spent. But as the rate at which you find challengeable submissions gets really low, then it becomes harder and harder to incentivize challengers. So, on some level, you want the rate of challengeable submissions to be really low. You want the list to be pristine. But it's hard to incentivize lists with no challengeable submissions. That everything on the list is perfect, or everything that has been submitted to the list is perfect. You can get high levels of rigor for sort of important criteria if you have some other criteria which are also part of the list requirements that maybe are a little more fuzzy and result in more challenges. For example, with our tokens list, the most important things are like, that the address is right and really corresponds to like the real project. But there are also all these criteria about like, like the quality of the logo and like the descriptive text. And most of the disputes are about those things rather than about the address being right. But at least like, because people like those fuzzier criteria, like give enough incentive for the challengers, it can result in like getting eyeballs on the important criteria. So they're like trade-offs around exactly how like you get incentivize people to like review what needs to be reviewed. And that only gets easier as you have AI tools. If the effort that the challenger has to make is reduced because that challenger is a bot, it becomes much easier to maintain a higher level of rigor.
So, well, there you see, as I imagine, these tools have more traction. You eventually will not need, like a trivial reason for challenging, because there is going to be enough attempts to try to list malicious items, because being listed in one of these lists, could, for an attacker, have like a malicious like vault whitelisted on a malicious asset whitelisted for people to buy, and then it's a Ponzi. There's a very famous case that happened with our tokens app, the first approach to curation that we did. That was tokens. It was launched in 2019, and there was a very famous case where like the community detected a case of a token called buyer chain, and this was challenged, was rejected because it was a scam, basically. Thank you, William. Anything else from you for today?
No, that's all for Filter today.
Cool. Thank you. Let's go to Lucia, who comes with an update from business development. Hello, Lucia. How are you?
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, perfect. Hi, everyone. So about the enterprise updates of the last few weeks, we have some things. The first one is that, as some of you may know, we are starting to test and implement a new marketing strategy for enterprise. That is, basically we want to target Web2 companies from different industries, and we are trying to generate different type of content like articles, case studies on LinkedIn to attract heads of legal, heads of CX. So trying to speak and write content that resonates with their pain points. And apart from that, of course, here in Argentina, the team is keep on working with the ombudsman figure. And regarding the launch of B2, we have a jurisdiction here that it's waiting for the launch, because when the launch happens, it will allow them to send a higher volume of cases, which is something that we are very excited about. And what else? Regarding this new strategy that we are doing, we are planning to have our first webinar on LinkedIn. That will be, we will share more details later, but it will be on February. So yes, I hope we can see some of you there. And of course, as always, we are still having many calls with different clients, different potential clients from different industries. And I think that's mainly it about the updates. I don't know, Fede, if you think I am missing something.
No, I think it's a lot of focus put on there. We are doing this work with the consumer agency from Argentina, which is results in under some conditions, Kleros ruling becoming binding for consumer claims. And there is lots of interest also from community members from different countries. In this edition of the fellowship, we have people actually trying to replicate this model into different countries. So Bolivia, there's people trying to do this in Brazil. There's people trying to do this, I think, in Chile. There was actually this week a paper published about Kleros and dispute resolution for commercial disputes in Chile. There is people trying to do this in Portugal, in France as well. So there's a bunch of people trying to do research on these topics, and also Canada. We just did a few weeks ago, we announced an agreement with very important and prestigious association of arbitration called CFIL, which is from Canada, and they will, well, among other things, it could be like a first step to Kleros becoming acceptable under Canadian legislation. Canada actually has some experience, in the online dispute resolution industry, in the sense of Vancouver. They had in British Columbia, they had a very famous British Columbia online court that was one of the pioneers in dispute resolution online. And you could there's work for neighborhood, kind of similar to what we are doing in Mendoza. They try to do in Vancouver. It was a bit different, the mechanism, but kind of similar use cases. So this is coming. There's lots of people doing this type of research. We are working. We can obviously, disclose ongoing conversations because of NDAs, but we are. I guess the main, proof of traction, if you want. Jean, how many people do we have in the new, LinkedIn Kleros Enterprise, page that we opened 2 weeks ago?
I think 460 or so. So yeah, it's growing a lot.
Yeah, for 100, next week is going to be 900, then it's 1,800, and then as our calculations, it's 5 billion, in 4 months, if we are correct with the forecast. So it's growing nicely, I would say.
Right. And also, it's growing, I think, better than we expected, and it also means that people want this type of content that we are putting out, which is very relevant. We post a very good article about fintechs last week, and the importance of using dispute resolution for fintechs, and we'll do the same probably for insurance, for government entities, and other use cases. So really nice to see this reaction.
Yeah. So all is going well in that aspect. I think I don't think I have anything else. Do we have anything else, Jean, for today? I was going to say something, but I kind of forgot. That's what happens when you start getting old. So you start to resort to tricks like using glasses. Just watch my glasses, not what I forgot. The price. Okay. I don't know. I was going to say something, but you go ahead, Jean.
No, I think we already went over an hour. So.
Oh no! I remember. Sorry. Before I forget. Just something to repeat. So last week we had JB because people ask about the audits of the V2. So last week there was a full a call where JB explained everything, what's going on and what are the next steps. We are basically, long story short, addressing the comments that the auditors made about the code. So it's just some things need to be fixed, and we fix them. Other things are not really vulnerabilities, but more like interpretation of how the flow should work, and then we explain why it doesn't need to be fixed. So it's going well. Not much more to add for now, but it's progressing. That was what I wanted to say, Jean. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and another thing maybe to say that the juror rewards are also incoming. We are fixing that. We don't have a definitive date, but it will be very soon.
Okay, I guess that's it for today. We will have hopefully next Monday community call in Spanish, assuming the world is still more or less working, existing. But assuming that, we will have that. So thank you very much all for coming, and see you next Monday. And let's keep praying so everything is going to be okay. Okay. See you guys.
Bye. See you.
Bye bye.